No mai, haere mai, and welcome to Cult Chat, the show where we talk about coercion, control, and all things cultish. I'm Dr. Caroline Ansley. I'm a medical doctor. When I was a child, I lived at the Centrepoint community, a notorious cult in New Zealand, and now I co-lead the Cult Informed Professional Network.
And I'm Liz Gregory, and I lead the Gloriavale Leavers Support Trust. We've been helping people exit Gloriavale for over a decade, and it's such a privilege to journey with them as they rebuild their new lives.
And I'm Lindy Jacob. I'm a former member of the Exclusive Brethren, and I lead the Olive Leaf Network, a charitable entity that supports leavers of high-demand religious groups.
Come with us as we unpack the cult playbook. We'll be talking to experts and leavers of coercively controlling groups, and we will call for Kiwis to cult-proof their lives.
Join us as we traverse the cultiverse.
A warning, this podcast contains references to subjects and discussions which may be difficult for some people to hear. Please take care of yourselves and your whānau when listening.
The Gloriavale Leavers Support Trust helped our family after we left Gloriavale. They helped us find a home. They helped us with clothes. They helped find us toys. They provided us with transport. We lived with almost nothing, except 4 brothers and 7 sisters. They're kind, caring, and awesome. We want them to help more people. Please help us to help them. Give a little to this emergency welfare appeal today.
Donate today at gloriavaleleavers.org.nz/donate.
Welcome back to Cult Chat. The three of us, Wahine, are in the studio together in Christchurch at Plains Media, and we're very excited to be together. So here we are. Nice to see you both, Liz and Lindy. Hello.
Hi, great to be here.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful to be back together in Otatahi, Christchurch?
It is, and we're so welcomed by the Plains Media crew.
Yes, it's so good to be here. They all came in together and almost gave a hug and like a group.
I got a hug.
Yeah. It's good. Part of the community. Thanks, Plains Media. We love you.
Yeah.
So, what have you two been up to?
Okay, is that such a dangerous thing to ask?
I know.
I'm
really worried you can mention chickens.
Yesterday.
Well, I think this actually normally is up to eyeballs with more insane things happening with Gloriavale. But, chickens, yes, I'm always happy to hear about chickens, Liz.
So great.
Tell me, what's happening in your chicken and duck world?
Well, Harvey Graham comes to me and he's got this lovely look on his face and his eyes are lit up and he said, "Oh, I've got something to tell you." And I said, "Oh,
don't tell me he's bought more ducks.
You've had babies." Yes. And I said, "What kind? Ducks or chickens?" He goes, "Oh, little fluffball chickens."
Oh,
well, he's so sweet. He's delighted because he didn't know. So what happened is we had accidental.
Look at Kaz trying to feel like we've just done this.
No, this is different than the last lot.
Yeah, last time it was ducklings, Kaz.
The last one,
completely different creatures.
Yeah, and the time before that it was chickens, but this is the same story.
Cat food.
We didn't know that the one that we'd just brought up was a male, and so before it was time to gift it away to someone else. Yeah, so this is a rinse and repeat. We've got down to grandchildren now. And you never know. They go away and they hide these clutches of eggs. And he thinks he's collecting them all every day, but he's not really. Somewhere they're hidden. And so then all of a sudden he says, "Oh, they're just tiny little fluff balls."
I bet they're very cute.
I haven't had time to visit them.
They're very cute. Well, yeah, I don't know what I've been up to. We don't have chickens. I've got mice coming out of our ears. But yeah.
You've got maggots.
Yeah, you got to run a maggot bucket for your chickens. People, if you don't do it, great source of protein for your chickens. The maggots?
Yeah.
No, they're not pets. They're pet food.
Oh,
it's a good idea. You should feed them to your cats. They might eat it. I don't know. Anyway, that is kind of gross. I apologise. For bringing maggots into the conversation. What have you been up to, Kaz? Can you steer us away from the territory of farm animals?
got a party rolling around shortly.
Oh, Kaz, does it end with a 0? Our listeners can just guess. Is it 30?
No, 40.
Surely.
Definitely 40.
That is cool. Happy birthday, Cats. Got a party coming up. Very cool. We'll be there. Cocktail dresses. Yep. Dress up, is it?
Dress up in your cocktail dress up.
Okay.
You know, husband had to look up, what does someone wear to a cocktail? What's cocktail attire these days? So actually it was very useful for me to look at that too.
Okay, there you go. Bow tie and feather piece in your hair. It sounds like you've got more than enough feathers from your farmyard to put in your hair.
You can actually get away with just a tie these days with cocktail, and you don't have to
Put
have
woman, you mean?
no, and you don't have to have the same coloured jacket as pants. It's okay to do
Good. I should have looked it up before I
that's
put
what-
it on the invite.
That's what Google said. Tell us now if you want the same colour.
I see.
There you go.
Cool. That'll be really fun, Kaz. Anyway, that's all fun and lighthearted, but today's topic is actually quite hefty, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit hefty.
Today's topic is hefty, important, very important, but hefty.
Yeah, well, we, if those of you who've listened to the previous episode where I interviewed Debs Murray from Eclipse Family Violence Services, the two of us had a wee yarn, and we kind of pressed play on it, not really intending for it to be an interview, but then we got to the end and went, oh, well, that actually was all right. I think we covered some really important stuff, and we were really just kind of going, well, we sense that the experience of being a woman in a high control group and a woman in family violence, which is her sphere of influence, are very similar. And how are they similar and how are they different? And how can people working in these two different spheres coordinate strategically together? Because there's some big work to be done, right?
Totally. Remember when we were in Barcelona at the International Cultic Studies Association conference last year, 2024, we spent some time going to seminars, and the words coercive control were really talked about quite a lot. There was some great research coming out of it. It was one of the big sort of light bulb moments for me of the conference, really. And since then, there's been a real desire that there is coercive control legislation has, we've talked about it before. We've done episodes on what is coercive control. So head back and listen to those episodes. But Debs Murray is a New Zealand expert on this. She's been running up and down the country. I love the way she spoke about how she strategically decided to go in and do the education portion of New Zealand to help people understand the issue before you can ask for legislative change. And so we're coming in on the coattails of Debs Murray coming back from the conference
With others.
Yeah, with others, saying, okie dokie, the same things that are at play in domestic violence, just replicate on a mass scale. You're talking about
In a
cults.
group, yeah.
And so you've got legislation in New South Wales, some Australian states,
In the UK.
but they're just looking through the domestic violence lens. And we're like, wow, what a waste of great legislation, because there really is no difference. It's the one-on-one coercive control and domestic violence, but it's the one on many or the many on many in the cultic experience. So we're saying,
It is astonishing when you look at the listings of what it is, like around your information control, relational control, physical control, financial control, like
use of fear and intimidation and threats.
The use of children.
pattern, and it's a key piece is patterns, right? It's not just a one-off thing. It's got to be a pattern of it. But yeah, when we look at it, it's been said by many people now over a bunch of years, it's exactly the same as what's happening in culty groups, but it's, done by the many to the one. And what do you do then? The current legislation doesn't fit, but it's exactly the same.
And yet it could so easily fit. It wouldn't take much. And so New Zealand doesn't have any of this legislation. So I remember reaching out, hearing about Debs, going, wow, you're doing great work. Actually, she may have reached out to me. And I'm saying, oh, wow, we've come back buzzing from this conference saying we need to get something going in the culture sphere. And she said, why don't we just start working together? And so Debs is, clearly, she's streets ahead in creating steering groups and working groups to deal with this issue. And she's extended a hand of welcome into, the cult sort of informed professional network in many ways to say, let's start talking. Let's not waste an opportunity to have some, legislative backing.
So I was just thinking, why does the legislative change matter? And the intuitively we kind of think, of course, if we can't see something as being real and as being a crime, then we can't do anything about it. But I wanted to think about what happened. We've mentioned in a previous episode about a recent law change around suffocation and strangulation. And the reason I want to bring that up is that until 2016, that wasn't a particular crime. Women would be having an altercation domestically, and the police would say it was a male against female assault, and they may get like a punch in the face or a kick and a strangle, and there would be no difference in the criminal conviction rate. They might get 3 months or a slap on the wrist or something like that. But that didn't actually do anything to highlight the difference in severity and the implications. Any person who's strangled has a nearly 7 times risk of fatality from that particular event, or and obviously the perpetrator is a 7 times higher chance of being a murderer as a result. So the law had to actually take it seriously, and so it changed the law. And
Quite different to a kick.
Yes, and what that did is, with the change in the law, we now see this particular act of violence against another person as a much more serious thing. We've called it something, we've put it into law, we've given with it a maximum sentence of 7 years. We now actually have to do something in the sector. We have to train the police to recognise, ask the questions when they see a woman or another potential victim of this, and actually describe what's happened. We have to get evidence to convict someone. We now have funding streams for assessing that. We now have particular support services for people that experience that. We have language. We have training for doctors. So this is what happens when something gets put into law. It's taking the invisible, which Deb talked about, and turning it into the visible.
Oh, that is
giving
so powerful.
people language and then actions that we can take. She did talk about the fact that we have coercive control mentioned in the Family Violence Act, but it's not criminal.
It's mentioned. And let's just remind our listeners what coercive control is for those who might be sitting here.
Do you read out what she said?
Let's do it. Great. Coercive control is a pattern of behaviours that take away someone's liberty. She called it a liberty crime. I love that.
Yeah.
So it takes away someone's liberty and freedom and ability to exist as themselves in their own world, and it results in entrapment. And all I can think of in the context I work in is how that fits like Gloria Vale perfectly. There's intentional behaviours. They are perpetrated to ensure that control is taken over another human being. And so what you're looking at are levers that is psychological, emotional abuse. These are things that you cannot see. They feel like they're inside someone's head. You can see bruises and punches and broken bones, and they can...
What you said just before, Kaz, and Deb said it, I found that fascinating that she said coercion is, she was talking about, it's invisibility, that just how critical that is for everyone to understand, wider society, the police, medical, everything. Like, it really is different, hey, when you have someone turn up in your GP practice or, someone, like, it's the invisibility makes it really, really hard. And I know I get asked by, social workers and people, you guys would as well, of like, oh, how can we tell if this person we're dealing with has got some of this invisible coercion control going on? And it is really hard to name those things to look out for.
Do you know what was heartbreaking when we were trying to raise awareness of the issues at Gloria Vale? It must have been frustrating for the police, saying, it sounds terrible, but we can't just kind of do anything about it. Like, there's nothing for us to hang it on.
No.
They needed sexual assault victims to come forward and speak to them and be willing to press charges.
Yeah, like, it's not a crime to live in a commune. It's not a crime to all wear the same dress. Like, some of that stuff isn't a crime. But can you read that definition again? Because I just feel like going over it one more time. It's crucial.
Coercive control is a pattern of behaviours that take away someone's liberty and the ability to exist as themselves in their own world, and it results in entrapment. There's intentional behaviours that are perpetrated to ensure that control is taken over another human being.
It's a liberty crime.
Yeah.
And so until this point, the police have just, and government departments and other groups haven't had, it's what we need. We need these assessment tools. We need validated tools. What does coercive control look like?
Yeah.
And that's the research work that's happening now. Well, you need that to underpin legislation. And then we need to train those around us. And I feel like the training in New Zealand around the cultic understandings has, exponentially increased.
Yeah.
And it might be worth talking here about the cult-informed professional network has that.
Well, I, along with a colleague, Dennis, lead a new organisation that we've got here in New Zealand, or organism, or identity, network, struggle with what to call it, called the Cult Informed Professional Network. And that is a collection of individuals who are already working in their own space to make a difference for people who are impacted by high control or cultic groups, therapists, lawyers, social workers, doctors, who are already doing the work. And the point of what we're doing is coming together to no longer be individuals struggling along in our own isolated space, but much like what the three of us are doing here in our mahi, actually coming together and actually being stronger together. And that's what the Cult Informed Professional Network is. And it's also spans New Zealand and Australia. And we are slowly...
Super exciting.
Yeah.
It is. Well, this is where we've got people like Debs.
Yeah.
Debs gets an invitation to come along, and we will have discussions and Zoom calls around the issue of how can we, and the idea of the group really is to keep doing work. It's not just to talk about the issues, it's to talk about how we can raise awareness. And I feel like in New Zealand, the leaders from Glorabelle have spoken up for a long time. We've got some bedrock understanding now that was not there 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. It wasn't. But I think we're, making a real difference in that sphere. And so to join hands with someone like Debs, who's making a difference in her sphere with coercive control, I have some hope in the future that it might be a crime to steal someone's liberty in that deliberate way that these high control groups do.
Yeah.
And women are mainly impacted.
Yeah.
I think they're impacted more. I really do.
They're really impacted in the domestic violence space. I actually don't know the sums, but I know that there's international research that suggests that 60 to 70% of women are in high control groups. The percentage of women in high control groups is 60 to 70% women. So already there's and I just I do wonder. I was reading something recently that was asking why so many women, and is it that women like being in cults more than men? I doubt it. I wonder if it's to do in part with a background patriarchy and misogyny that breeds compliance into women, teaches women to accept and tolerate things that we shouldn't, but the society says we must.
That would be interesting to research, because I've always thought about it being more, it was on the recruitment side, that the narcissistic recruiter knew how to capture the emotional bonds of a woman's heart.
Well, if you think of how many women are born and raised, they didn't get recruited.
No.
But in those groups, they're often taught submission and compliance such that they don't have as many skills that would be useful for independence in a way that, just the Glorabelle sphere, so many of the men there have skills that they can use in the outside world. Whereas women have no skills.
They had domestic skills.
That are useful in the outside world. That employable, that's what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cooking skills and cleaning skills are very important, but it's just that marketable, employable skills like farming and flying a plane and driving a truck.
The trades.
Yeah,
definitely. So women are born in, totally agree, there's just this suppression right there, and it's just an inability to have a voice. And so when violence in a physical sense comes your way, you're already disempowered. But what they don't realise is they're living within a group of psychological violence, but there's just no way they necessarily even notice it or even call it that. Yeah. There are women sitting inside groups that would just refuse, like exclusive breathing, they'd refuse to believe that they've been affected by coercive control or psychological violence.
Yeah, because it's that whole thing where people get so indoctrinated that they believe it is a choice they've made. They believe that I choose to live like this. I want to have no voice, or I want to live this life where a life of service and where I don't participate to the full extent of my gifts because it's a sacrifice for God or whatever. There's this whole kind of...
And women are taught to put their needs before others. They're taught to put their children's needs first. Yeah. So, but the implication for that individual woman, the implications for their children, for their community, may not be quite so clear to the individuals. And I was reading a study last night that was called "The Health Impacts of Women Who Are in Low Control Environments." It's a systematic review, and they had an observation of 30 observational studies were included, and they said overall the evidence suggests that women's lower control or lower autonomy or lack of freedom of movement outside the home, lack of authority to access healthcare for sick children, for instance, was associated with poorer mental and physical health for women and higher morbidity, so that's illness, and higher mortality, so death, for their children, after adjusting for their socioeconomic circumstances. So it wasn't just the situations they were in. This experience of having less autonomy, less freedoms, less choices actually led to poorer health, shorter lives, and that's not this wasn't in a high control group context. That's just generally what it actually means to be a woman who's shut down in terms of freedom and autonomy like this. It actually leads to everyone
Suffer.
Everyone suffers.
Because if you've got a mother who's like that, then her parenting, the way she relates to her children, emotional shutdown is devastating for children. You get lack of attachment. The flow-on impacts are quite horrendous, and yet you'd go to these Glorabelle concerts and Hopeful Christian would just want to parade these mothers with their babies, and they're the most important people in our community, and we just love our mothers. And I'm like, that love, you're killing these people. They're dying inside. They're lifeless. They're pale. They're gaunt because their liberty has been stolen.
And men's liberty in those environments are being stolen as well. They're loving these women. They're loving these daughters. They're loving these mothers. They are not. It's not like to say all of the men are harmful and all the women are suppressed and oppressed. It's like the whole community becomes
well, their liberties removed. Their entrapment.
And actually they all then perpetuate abuse on each other.
Yes.
I recall that in a previous episode discussion. One of our guests was Veronica and Lindsay in the 2x2 talk, just talking about the fact that women then became abusers of other women. And I think in the context of Glorabelle, there were women that were, we've talked earlier about this, the hand clamping of the children. There were cruel acts, children put under mattresses in the early childhood, and early childhood teachers sitting on it, and the child was just less than 5 and remembers blacking out and then said, I think that's when my nightmares started.
Oh my
and they were
gosh,
adult.
Horrific.
And this is women, but those women thought they were doing the right thing.
Horrific.
I know, there are horrific stories. And I just
well, that's where, at some point, didn't Debs talk about the difference between being blind and invisible? I mean, she was probably there not talking necessarily about people on the inside, probably more talking about people on the outside looking in. But there was a bit of a good point, Debs, around actually, is this stuff invisible, or are we choosing to be blind? Are we choosing to turn away and not see the stuff because for whatever reason we don't want to deal with it, or it's too complicated or overwhelming? Do you remember her talking about that?
I do. But that's about being a bystander. I appreciated what she said about primary victims.
I love that.
And she said primary victims are not helpless and hopeless. They're strong, they're brave, they're courageous, and they analyse their risk and they strategise their safety for their own survival every minute of every day. So that person who keeps going back to the violent offender, it's on 7 times on average a domestic violence survivor could go back to their partner before they sort of leave fully and finally. Oh, wow. And their friends and family around them must be just tearing their hair out. I don't get it. But Deb said, I genuinely loved my partner. I just wanted the abuse to stop.
Yeah.
And
it's so crucial, because it's exactly the same again with the culty things, right? How many people, at the Olive Leaf Network, we get contacted by people who usually spend years talking with us. I mean, we've only in our 3rd year of launching, but there are people who it's very rarely a one and done, I'm leaving, here I am. On the more often it's kind of what you're talking about, where people are in touch with us off and on for months and months as they slowly wrestle with, it's not that they still often have such deep love. It's not black and white, is it?
No.
They've still got, she talked about that there's threat and harm as well as love and hope being woven in together. And I was just like, that's exactly the same for people trying to leave high control groups. There's relationships, deeply loving relationships and bonds that are like struggling with the harms and the threats that are going on to their identity and their liberty. And so, leaving is so hard.
It is. So they're weighing up. So they're doing what these domestic violence
they're brave, they're
sufferers.
strong,
They
they're brave.
strategize their safety for their own survival every minute of every day. And I know that. I've had women telling me that. But remember the concept of the shelf, the back of your head, where you stack up on that shelf things you don't like, things you feel aren't right, questions you might have, and the shelf eventually breaks.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that you're more likely there will be an exit point.
Yeah.
And boy, do they need support at that point when they realise what.
Yeah, but that is crucial way to be like that delay or that returning is not because of like a helplessness or like a victim, just a helpless, stupid person.
No.
It's they are strong and courageous and they're strategizing and trying to do this wrestle, trying to do this dance that is
Because the outcome, when it says for their own survival, this is not lightweight concepts. These are the concepts of death. I might die.
Well, you feel like you're going to die if you leave as well as die if you stay, right? Like,
Or you're forced to take action to end your own life, as Deb so
that was
movingly
described. Yeah. She talked about how suicide is made a note somewhere, but she said it's a way to escape for some people. It's not about wanting to end your life. It's about seeking for a way to escape the kind of the hell that you're in. And yet, she talked about how that people can be then blamed as the crazy one or blamed as like being mentally unwell, whereas actually it's almost, in a weird way, it's a survival strategy of like the ultimate act of removing yourself from the violence. And you can see another way out.
And the narrative being that the one who has been so torn asunder, ripped apart, had their identity stripped into nothingness, is now the crazy
one who took their life.
unstable one. And the problem is that society still doesn't get this. Still doesn't get it, and still plays along what doesn't challenge
stigma.
that narrative. That how did she get to this point?
And that maybe it's not so much about her vulnerabilities or her victimness or her mental unwellness, but actually the environment being so cruel and so dehumanizing in such a place of entrapment that it was the only way to escape that.
But we still are in a society where things aren't equal between men and women. And in situations where it's man versus woman in the court, for instance, women aren't always believed. Men are more often believed. And that is the history that we come from, a patriarchal context. So there is a background for some of these narratives that get kind of constantly reactivated in individual circumstances.
Very sobering. When you do consider it's survival. It's anyone leaving a high control group is at the end of their tether.
It's a desperate act towards survival. It's not just about like, I want to go to a different gym or like.
It's not that.
I think back to when I left, and I have used this metaphor before, I think perhaps on air, but for me, I remember feeling like the horror and the terror, even though I'd got pushed to that point of being made to leave, because I just could not accept the beliefs that I had to believe if I was to stay in the Brethren. Again, it wasn't that I wanted to leave my family or wanted to leave my home or wanted to leave my community. It was that I was told you can no longer stay unless you believe these things. But I remember the horror and the terror, and I remember describing to people as if I felt like I was like jumping or being pushed out of a plane into like pure blackness, which is very, poetic, and you might say, well, that's extreme. But yeah, I didn't know anybody on the outside, like the people I was going to. I'd begun some limited contact with them, but they were strangers. I didn't trust them. I was scared of them. I didn't know if they really did have my well-being at mind. I had no idea how I was going to find work or what the roof over my head was going to be look like, or if I'd be under a bridge or end up raped. Like, these are all the things that you get told, this litany of terrible things that are going to happen to you when you leave. And so you
car crash, lightning strikes,
you're going to have cancer, you're going to die alone. And so often leaving is not this thing of like, oh, here's the utopia that's going to be handed on your plate. You're going to have, you're going to have freedom now, and you're going to have like all these good things. Often you actually feel like you're going to something worse. And so I can see how some people feel like it's a lie, but they feel like suicide is the only option to truly remove themselves from harm, because they're taught that leaving is going to be harmful, and yet they know that staying is harmful. And so they feel like they're truly choosing between, what's it called, hell and a frying pan, or what is it, frying pan or the fire? Yeah, they truly choose. They feel like my only options are the frying pan or the fire. And so I can see how some people feel that suicidality is like their only option, which is so sad. It's such a shame, because there are more options, and the freedom does come, and the healing does come. But it is a long journey. It's a challenging journey.
Well, Debs did say, she said, we still very much in Aotearoa, New Zealand, measure family violence based on how many black eyes and broken bones there are. And in actual fact, we've got broken hearts, broken souls, broken spirits, and we know for a fact now international research tells us that family violence-related suicide is more prevalent than family violence-related homicide.
Wow.
Gosh. And we know that the cult research that Janja Lalich did in Escaping Utopia said that there was 10 times higher rates for people linked with cults.
Of suicide?
Yes. So
Suicide
national average
6 times attempts, or
yeah. Like, really.
That is so desperately sad.
And you're not even going to necessarily get honesty from people who are still inside the group either.
Yes.
So it's people left too. And
yeah, those are people who've left.
Wow. It is super sobering, eh? That is super sobering.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we could segue onto reproductive coercion and because the fact is, it is the strategy. Well, maybe I should describe what reproductive coercion is. I pulled out a quote from Aislinn Weltz's thesis. She wrote recently, 225, Understanding Reproductive Coercion in Cults and Destructive Group Settings. And it's the only article that I could find on the topic. Lots of stuff on reproductive coercion in family violence, but almost nothing on high control groups. Wow. And she has said, as described by Grayson Anderson, 2018, reproductive coercion is a behaviour that interferes with the autonomous decision-making of a woman with regard to reproductive health. It may take the form of birth control sabotage, pregnancy coercion, or controlling the outcome of a pregnancy. So that comes from research in intimate partner situations. So it makes sense. One person, a male, is stopping access to birth control, is coercing a woman into pregnancy, or determining the outcome of a pregnancy, whether she continues or stops pregnancy. So taking away the control. And she also talked in that about the difference in an abusive group setting. So not only is a potentially an individual partner or a family member or many family members, but the whole organisation structurally coerces a woman into not being able to have freedom around her reproductive rights. And when I mean reproductive, we're talking when you have sex, who you have sex with, who you choose to be married to, what age you choose to be married, whether or not you're married at 12 to someone who's been sexually abusing you and now is your husband, how many children you have, how close together, where they get where they have the babies, who delivers,
home birth, hospital,
and the
of course abortion.
And the reason this is relevant to this conversation is that in the intimate partner family violence sector, it is so common for women to, as part of the falling in love with the coercive controller, part of the intentionality is often early pregnancy. get her pregnant early.
Oh, really?
So the intentionality being the perpetrator who has his own intention to entrap. And he makes use of the reproductive element.
You're saying that's like a researched fact?
It just is a common thing that happens, a common part of the process. So,
Do you think that's part of, I mean, Gloriavale's don't they have the highest birth rate in the world?
I think so. Yeah, 10 children on average. You know, when they did the census, they actually only had tick boxes up to 6 children. And so 6 above was its own box on its own. So when they actually did the census analysis, they tried to make out that the average number of children in Gloriavale was 4. I said, well, that's just clearly not correct. I'd like to see your forms. And that's because it only went up to 6. And, you know, above 6. They weren't able to gather up the 13th, 14th child. Yeah, it was really interesting.
So, I mean, because they're obviously a pretty extreme example in terms of the encouragement to reproduce.
It was all about reproduction. From young, it was your role is to have children. They admitted in court that they stopped going in proselytising at the Cathedral Square in Christchurch. That's how they had done early recruitment.
Okay.
Once they got themselves a dedicated group of entrapped people, they then turned and admitted to the judge.
Why did they want so many babies?
Well, they changed strategy. That was how they were going to grow.
The kingdom of God.
They said it was about growing.
But then on the other hand, I seem to recall in the Mary Garden interview that you did earlier in the year, Kaz, to take it to the extreme other end. If I remember rightly, she had enforced abortions with a guru.
And that's not it's not uncommon.
And that's
it's not uncommon.
He didn't want to compete, remember? His attention to compete with the baby.
The Bhagwan, Osho, or Bhagwan Rajneesh, Sri Rajneesh. He wanted women to terminate pregnancies as well. It really discouraged any children from it. It's quite common for different groups to have complete celibacy, only have sex for procreation or
the other way.
Apart from the leader, of course, and everybody else thinks that nobody was celibate.
Exactly. Yeah. So my question around, you said that the reproduction for Gloriavale was focused around enlarging the group. And I would suggest, but also to control the woman. Also
keep them occupied or something.
Keep them entrapped.
But it was a workforce. Because it was based on labour and people working. So it was always a very entrepreneurial group. It was always about work.
Free labour.
Right from early. I mean, you've got pictures from like the 1970s. I get people sending me their photographs of, here they are as an 8-year-old child out. And there's good working when you're an 8-year-old. And then there's that kind that your community was built on the back of what looks like slave labour and smells like it. And guess what?
And child labour.
It is. And child forced labour. Yeah. And so the woman, I think there's more about this as well, though. If you've got someone who has and they're a cult leader and they have sexual deviancies and they get a thrill about teaching young ones what it will be like when you're married and what to expect, and they love doing the pre-marriage counselling, and then they like to
more than pre-marriage counselling,
and they like their kids to watch the parents procreating.
Gloriavale, actual stuff.
They like to encourage the children to stand and watch. Yeah. So there are lots of reasons.
Oh, there are many reasons.
Claiming, but the reality is, women were being controlled. They had no ability to say, no, I don't agree with any of this aspect.
Well, I've found a quote here again from Aislinn Weltz's Masters. She's quoted, in the case of women, specifically reproductive coercion may be perpetrated through coercive, unwanted or non-consensual sex. And furthermore, it uses women's reproductive capacity as a weapon against them.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think of when you are a woman and you're trapped, you are trapped with your children.
Oh, yeah.
You can't just leave. As soon as you're pregnant, you're trapped to this man, you're trapped to this family, you're trapped to this group. You're no longer able to just lift up your skirts and get out of there.
You're so,
your vulnerability is your uterus, your ovaries are used against you. And
I'm thinking about all the people that have left Gloriavale. There's a good 300 in the last sort of 12 years or so. And I'm just thinking about the family groups that have left. And it was always the men that got thrown out, left the woman in there. and many of them have fought for their wives and they've come out. But from memory, I'm only recalling one woman to ever leave and take her children, and the husband is still there.
Wow.
That's not the norm, and I know that it involved
Yeah.
intervention, and there were reasons
The
for it.
barrier for a woman. I mean, that's not to say that men don't love their children, but there's something extraordinarily biologically connecting between a woman and her children. And
Well, and especially if you're like literally practically still breastfeeding and that sort of thing, right? Like,
and you've had all your ability to live in the outside world largely shut down.
Well, if you're born in there, you've
Yeah.
heard just bad things about it.
yeah. Wow.
Powerful form of coercion.
Yeah, it's reminded me, because this is not happening just in a vacuum, this reproductive coercion. Well, it's not just happening in Gloriaville. It's not just happening in the exclusive residence, not just happening in all these different, like Centre Point, there was reproductive coercion there as well, if you consider like the kind of forced polygamy that occurred there. It's also happening in society at large. And I'm reminded of only in September, there was news all over the big newspapers about $10 million worth of contraceptives being held in a warehouse in Belgium. Have you heard about this?
No.
US 10 million. It was IUDs, implants, long-acting injectables, and oral contraceptives that were purchased by the US International Aid Organization that got shut down by the current Trump administration because we're not giving money to poor countries anymore. And so all of this 10 million is sitting in a warehouse right now of these, I think that the used by date is 2036 or something. So like not going to expire for a very long time. And they were destined to sub-Saharan Africa. And because of the ideology of the Trump administration around reproductive rights, they're going to destroy $10 million worth of reproductive freedom for sub-Saharan African women. And it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars
To destroy
it. And the European organisations are saying, please just sell it to us.
Yeah.
And we'll get it to African nations. So the ideology being, and that's the message, as I understand it, the messaging that's coming out of that administration is around controlling the reproductive rights of women and equating contraception to termination of pregnancy.
Gloriaville does
But that's just appalling because that, like, from the little I know of some of these areas with huge challenges.
It will lead to deaths.
It will lead to death.
Hundreds of thousands of deaths.
Like, it's not necessarily that those women, a bunch of them, will not necessarily even, it's not like they're wanting to have those babies. There'll be just so many other factors at play where, they can't actually economically support having X amount of babies, and they actually desperately need contraception because they can't even. Oh, that's so hard. That's terrible.
So that's happening right now in the world. So like there's a, and that comes out of an ideology around women's ability to make their own choices about their reproductive rights at a cultural scale.
It's kind of assuming will they be able to say no to sex in that window or whatever, so they don't get pregnant. Whereas actually, they probably don't have that choice.
They try and breastfeed, but I know in Gloriaville the women try to breastfeed longer.
Yeah,
and then I know
and keep your fertility.
And in Gloriaville they use the scripture where it talks about husbands and wives
or something.
Husbands and wives should be available for each other. But if there's a period of time where you're in prayer and fasting, and you mutually agree together, you're not going to, you're going to abstain from certain things. Well and be that's between your marriage partner relationship. But in Gloriaville, it was an absolute, on no circumstance did a woman have a right to say no. It didn't matter if you had your baby the day before or about to have it the next day. And what you had there with that lack of consent are then people trying to find those double forked ways of
trying to wriggle around
it. And one of I know one family was saying things like, oh yes, we'll go into a period of prayer and fasting, shall we? It was sort of like their own
That
inner
was
private
the only
married
way
couple's
they could,
joke.
like, justify it.
Because it's about the time where I would get pregnant. But after a year, you've got other women and other people just assuming you're going to have these babies.
Again,
So
yeah.
again, I'm just thinking about the contraceptive issue. I remember when Dr. Janja Lalich was out last year, and we did a little snippet together of a video, and she was talking about the definition of a cult, and she talked about you can have groups that have rules, like the Catholic Church might say we don't do contraceptives. The difference is the Catholic Church aren't in your bedroom rifling through your drawers, checking to see whether you have or you haven't. Cults are in your drawers, checking to see, and there's this monitoring. So you might actually have a similar belief for similar reasons, but the difference with a cult is the way they expand into every area of your life and the fear that they, hold.
Comes back to the definition of coercive control again, right? That, just completely removing that. What was it? Something about who you are.
Which is different than someone who's not been coercively controlled, who chooses to take a conservative position on an issue.
Yeah, coercive control is a pattern of behaviours that takes away someone's liberty and freedom and ability to exist as themselves in their own world and results in entrapment.
You might have someone that believes that having use of contraceptive, and if they choose as a couple and to have many children,
Well, like
marvellous.
if it's their choice, and
Right,
if
it's their choice.
and they can economically sustain it, and all that kind of thing. And if it's the woman's true choice about who she is, if it's her choice that she wants to do that, but when that choice is being made for her,
But it is, there is a targeting of women, though.
Yes.
yeah,
And it is not necessarily targeting of women by other women.
Because most cult leaders are men.
Yeah.
Most are narcissists with difficulties in the area of sexuality, exploitation, the control. And women, there is a strong emotional bond that occurs when there's a love bombing from a cult leader. And I think women are brought into this system early, and it's sort of like they're recruited into the new norm.
Are they recruited more, or is it just that they have less ability to leave because of other socio-cultural factors, and they're trained already by the wider society to tolerate? I
think I was thinking,
or are they targeted more?
I was wondering about that in terms of like Gloria, because more than half of them were from international. Yeah, they were travellers, but I'm just looking at it. It seems to be a pretty even mix of the women and men. What I did notice is that there's a collection of men at Gloria Vale who don't have wives with them, and they're sort of in their 60s or 70s. So they're original people who joined in the earlier years. And then I had always presumed that they had families and had a breakup, and then they went and joined, what was sort of Springbank became Gloria Vale. Just recently, it's been explained to me that no, most of those men actually had their wives and families. They were still married to them at the time that they came into the sphere of Neville Christian and the Cooperites, and it created a falling out when one party wanted to join the group and was more radically interested in it. And in that instance, it was the men that joined, and they forsook their wives and children. So those women would have been called stroppy women. They wouldn't submit, and they would have seen and smelt Neville Cooper a mile off and realised what was going on in that group, because it wasn't sort of hard to see the patriarchal and the control influence.
yeah.
And they don't want stroppy women like that.
No.
They're dangerous. But then if you do get a stroppy woman, you have to break her and break her and break her. But children are a way of tethering you to a group. And then you marry.
Exactly.
You get your children married off early. We know that happened. We know. Big family left Gloria Vale, then another sibling started to leave, and next thing one of the other siblings was getting out of the blue married to someone, and everyone said that is to keep that family from popping out and just all leaving.
Have you guys done any reading on the FLDS?
Yes.
Yeah, and the whole the ideology and the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, FLDS, of that you can't enter heaven unless you have 3 wives.
That's right.
And so it requires, so any man, his
convenient,
first wife, and you can't use contraception, his first wife and him and all of their many children are not safe until they have a second wife and all of those many children, and then a third wife.
And it's
then
such convenient
and then-
spiritual abuse to
and then
justify
they-
wanting
yes,
to.
and then they now they're guaranteed to enter heaven as long as they continue to behave.
And they populate their planet with the wives. That's
Yes.
the whole idea.
Yes, and meanwhile, there's nowhere for the boys to go.
Mhm.
The boys rose up and they create
Right. So like a threat.
They
No.
have to get rid of
Get rid of the men.
2 out of 3.
It's like running a chicken farm. All the roosters
Roosters.
get chopped
By
off.
the time they're 17 and 18, 15,
younger.
16, 14,
Younger.
they're out
Yeah.
and they're troublemaker. And they're
yeah.
called the lost boy syndrome.
and they're
really
on,
sad.
they're on the street.
Yeah.
They're on the street, and the extraordinary dysfunction in those households of 3 mothers trying to compete for running their home and their values and their way of life.
The man just gets to choose which bed he sleeps in.
And do you know? And this is, it's not necessarily always a really controlling, dominating man. It might be a really decent, caring man who actually wants to do right by his family, but has to get 2 more wives and has to somehow manage them. And then the appalling thing that happens, if he cannot control them,
Yeah.
keep them submitted, squashed down, including his daughters,
That's right.
the leadership at any point can
Yeah.
uplift every single one of them and give
Wives and the children
give them
to another man.
to another man.
Oh my gosh.
And that guy gets ousted and loses.
Oh,
He can get-
he loses,
yeah,
gets
yeah,
thrown out.
everything, and it's so gross. And children of 12, 13, 14 girls are sold into marriage to be third,
Like a
fourth, fifth,
70-year-old
10th wife.
And then you go and watch, and they put on these glossy shows, sister wives, making out that, oh, we're just so happy in our house together. Well, actually, no.
No, that they're being like
Terrible.
if you cause any disruption in your home and your husband is not seen to be able to control your family, everyone is divided and sent elsewhere into.
Yeah, this is
and-
all perfectly legal.
Well,
no,
no,
it's
it's
not.
legal because you actually in America are only allowed 1 wife. So they call them wives, but they're not legally allowed to marry them. But remember, they sit on the state line between Utah and they're in a place called Short Creek,
Yes.
Arizona, and they're making use of the fact that their town is split in half between 2 borders. And so federal authorities don't know whose jurisdiction the crimes are occurring in.
And also, like everyone is in the town, and all the people in the town are part of the system. That the the police. And,
But you do know that the main house of Warren Jeffs, there's been this new law that's come out that basically Proceeds of Crime Act, and in this whole village, this whole town, they're taking back. The wives are making legal claims saying, well, actually, that is my house. Abandoned homes left empty. One of the wives has taken over the home. She was the
original
something of Warren Jeffs, who's still in prison. And it's turned into a refuge for women in the town who want to leave.
Oh my
I mean, how courageous. It's very moving.
positive outcome. Wow.
And
That's
gutsy.
poetic justice, isn't it?
And they're helping people leave.
Anyway, I brought them up as an example of reproductive coercion on steroids. Like to the absolute max. All aspect of womanhood is reproductive womanhood is suppressed,
And then tied it
controlled,
with your salvation.
and the men absolutely suffer too. You can see that. Like you can't even have a family. Either you're kicked out as boys, or they have to buy into the system where they have no security, and whether they want to have power over their wives or not.
So the reproductive coercion goes far. It's earlier than the time they even come together. If it's a forced marriage or someone you didn't necessarily choose of your own free will, although that's always such a hard thing. The people in Glory about the woman, I chose to marry so and so. It was like, well, actually, they're the only one that was there offering, and you knew that.
and
if
that you
didn't-
weren't related to.
and you'd have to leave if you didn't. So it's not true. So the reproductive coercion is right back there where the leader will choose not to put 2 strong people together. They choose a weaker with a stronger, they're pairing up, not just genetics, and they are careful in Gloryvale. And I do have to dispel the myth. It's not a community where people are incestuously involved and married to their cousins, their brothers and sisters. Okay, so you can throw almost anything at Gloryvale and it will probably stick, but that one's not true. Okay, they're not related to the people they're marrying.
They're not.
They have bloodlines. That's why they have this big marriage tree, and you have to marry that one because
Yeah, but it must be
literally,
getting really limited.
It
Like
is.
my brother, and
Very.
I remember in the Brethren, they've got all these family trees to try and stop all of that. And he only had like 2 or 3 women in New Zealand that he could marry because of they do practice endogamy, right?
That's exactly what's happening. They are leaving because they look about and go,
They're doing the India thing, getting people from India and vice
there are only 2
Anyway.
people left.
to wrap things
We
up.
have to wrap this up.
Wow,
Very interesting.
it's scary. It's scary to put it bluntly.
Yeah, it is really scary. There's so many ways that women are controlled and can be controlled. And we hope we've done this topic justice. We will continue to keep coming back to this topic.
Yeah.
We do need to say, as we wrap up, as always, that there is a recovery. That, women can recover from their horrendous experiences inside these groups, the moral injury, and they're often part of resistance networks inside these groups and recovery. And so we want to honour women who are able to survive. They've weighed up the risks and they've moved out into a more positive life. And we thank women for speaking up.
We think Debs Murray, she's an extraordinary survivor.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, and the 2 women we interviewed earlier, Veronica and Lindsay from the 2x2s, again, examples of extraordinary women.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We thank Plains Media for supporting the show. We invite you to head to our social media platforms, send us feedback. We're really encouraged by the feedback we've been receiving lately. Make sure you like our YouTube clips, share it with your friends, because we think the message we've got here is not just for people who've survived cults, it's not just for professionals, it's not just for those who are inside, and we hope we've got some listeners there, but this is really for your Kiwi public, your Australian, the international audience. There's something here for everyone, how to cult-proof your life. Join us again for another episode, another day. Thanks.
Matiwa.
See you next time.
If anything in today's episode was difficult or upsetting for you and you would like to talk to somebody, we encourage our New Zealand listeners to free call or text 1737 for support from a trained counsellor. Or you might like to visit the resources section of the Olive Leaf Network website, where you can find a range of organisations and resources that might be able to support you. We would also like to remind you that the views and thoughts and opinions that have been expressed in this program are the speakers alone, and Cult Chat does not necessarily endorse or share them.